This is a Wave breaking news alert.
Breaking news right now at 6. After 3 weeks with no updates, a major breakthrough in the investigation into the Harvest Homecoming deadly shooting with multiple arrests made. Welcome to Wave News at 6. I'm John Bowl.
And I'm Myra Ansari. Just 30 minutes ago, Wave received word 4 people have been arrested in connection to the shooting.
Back on October 27th, multiple raids were held across southern Indiana and Louisville, and a couple of people detained. But this is the first report of any arrests in connection with the actual shooting that killed 18-year-old Bryce Gerlach and injured 2 others back on October 12th.
And New Albany Mayor Jeff Gahan says that a press conference will be held tomorrow afternoon to share more details. We're expecting to learn more about the arrests, pending charges, and other new information in this investigation.
Well, it may be out of operation now, but the fallout's only beginning in the devastating Givaudan plant explosion that killed 2 and hurt several others.
A week of collecting evidence, more than 130 people were interviewed, and our first answers from local investigators digging into what's being described as a terrible industrial accident.
But home and business owners haven't gotten many of the answers they have demanded from the company. That could change quickly here over the next few minutes. It begins in the Clifton community. They could be minutes away from getting the first chance to ask Givaudan leaders how they plan to make this right.
And comes after what we hear from the family of one of the victims in their first public statements, backed by the same lawyer who represented George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's families.
But first, we're learning how investigators are piecing together the timeline of the explosion. Let's get to Wave News reporter Kirsten Foote live in Clifton, where investigators were able to recover a black box from the rubble.
Yeah, John, and that black box is kind of like an airplane black box. It has crucial data. Investigators say they also had surveillance video from inside the plant showing the moments that led up to that explosion. They used that as well as dozens of interviews with employees inside the building and neighbors along the Clifton neighborhood and Payne Street, where I am, who experienced damage. They used all of that to learn what went wrong, and neighbors we spoke with say finally having an answer is a relief.
There's a few more answers. This is the first sign of good faith.
Nick Simon owns the apartment complex across from Givaudan. He's boarded up windows and still has debris and broken glass around. But he says getting some answers about what led to all of this is a relief. Louisville Fire Arson and the ATF narrowed it down.
We were able to definitively say that cooking vessel number 6 failed, and that led to a catastrophic event.
Investigators believe that tank didn't vent properly, causing it to overpressurize and explode. Interviews revealed a possible history of maintenance issues with that particular vessel.
We've talked to a number of employees that were present the day of and employees that were not present.
Investigators were able to recover that tank's black box.
The black box contains data regarding the cooking vessel itself, including pressures and temperatures of the vessel and the mixture inside. It also includes data regarding the control processes of what we're going on to try to remedy.
The explosion was so intense, it damaged homes and businesses nearby. The ATF confirmed Monday pieces of cooking vessel number 6 landed on Payne Street. Neighbors have been told this piece of metal we saw last week was part of that tank. Investigators say the explosion was accidental and there's no threat to public safety.
This is an incredibly tragic incident. We hope that promptly providing this information brings some relief to everyone, including those that lost loved ones or were seriously injured.
And the ATF says to expect a final cause report in the coming days, which we'll be sure to bring you. They add that OSHA and other state agencies will be working on investigating the workplace accident. They'll be working directly with the company on that one. Reporting live in the Clifton neighborhood, Kirsten Foote, Wave News.
Okay, Kirsten. Now, the family of Kevin Dawson Jr. is demanding answers and justice. Dawson's body was found in the rubble of the damaged plant hours after the company told rescuers that everybody had been accounted for.
Wave News reporter David Mattingly is live near the plant in Clifton and tells us a familiar figure representing the family.
That's right, Myra. Benjamin Crump won a $12 million settlement for the family of Breonna Taylor, and he's now asking questions about the explosion that killed Kevin Dawson Jr. Dawson's family would like to know why the company said everyone was accounted for when Dawson was still in the wreckage of the plant. Crump says Dawson's family wonders if a prompt response might have saved his life. We heard from Dawson's girlfriend today. Malika Watson went to 3 hospitals hospitals looking for Dawson. When she couldn't find him, she came back to the plant and tried to look for him herself.
So I ran between two houses. I ran under the yellow tape. I got all the way to the building. The fence cut my legs, and I just wanted to go in. And the fire people said, you can't go in there, it could blow. It already blew. I just want him out, and he's not at the hospital. I just want to get him out of there.
There is no lawsuit to speak of yet. Crump and attorneys working with him were not able to answer any questions about the findings of the investigation announced today. His family said Dawson had worked here at the plant for a little over a year and a half, and he was described as a dedicated and loving family man. David Mattingly, Wave News.
David, thank you. So the concerns of the Clifton community right now in front of Givaudan officials. It's a live look from United Crescent Hill Ministries, as for the first time, officials from Givaudan are supposed to be taking questions from the public. The company says they're focusing on supporting those who were injured and the families of those who lost their lives. But there's so many questions still remaining. We're going to see what answers they give tonight. That meeting got underway a few minutes ago. Our crew is going to be working through the night, bringing you all the developments from that meeting. So stay with Wave Online and, of course, tune into Wave News at 11 for complete coverage of what happened in that meeting tonight.
Well, most of the COVID building shutdowns have long ended in the last few years. Only a dozen federal buildings are still closed to the public.
But the legacy of those building closures and having employees work from home is having another impact. Wave News troubleshooter Mark Stevens says visitors to the Snyder Courthouse and the Mazzoli Federal Building may notice bottles of water next to the water fountains.
Yeah, it's while we were covering the Brett Hankison trial that a federal worker brought us a case of bottled water and said, don't drink the building's tap water. It turned out the government agency that owns the buildings has been doing nationwide water quality testing following the COVID shutdowns. What it found here in Louisville could be hazardous to your health.
Throughout Louisville's Romano Mazzoli Federal Building, employees and visitors will notice out-of-order signs and painter's tape on the water fountains, as well as bottled water stacked nearby.
It's a good thing that we're doing this type of testing to see what's going on, especially post-COVID.
That's because the General Services Administration has been testing the water in thousands of federal buildings across the country this year for problems related to the COVID shutdowns. It's looking for unacceptable levels of lead, copper, E. coli, and Legionella, a bacteria that causes a type of pneumonia called Legionnaire's disease. All this testing started because of a 2022 audit that found water safety was compromised at several federal buildings because of a lack of testing and water system maintenance during the shutdowns. George Young helps lead a Louisville lab that's been testing lots of these new government building water samples.
It's still prevalent in our water systems, and unfortunately, one of the other side effects of the pandemic was a lot of low usage buildings. And when your building is not used very often, your water is not flushed regularly, you'll develop biofilms, and in those biofilms, the Legionella will proliferate.
The buildings here house a number of agencies the public may need to visit in person. Social Security and Immigration Courts and the courthouse, offices for the Railroad Retirement Board, the EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Mazzoli Building. There's even a daycare there. Test results found 55% of the water fountains in the Mazzoli Building were over the limit for Legionella. The government turned off all the fountains and is providing bottled water for now. Test results in the courthouse found 2 out of 37 fountains above the Legionella limit, but the bacteria was a type that is less likely to cause the disease. No fountains were turned off, but bottled water was also provided. Young says most healthy people exposed to the bacteria will be fine, but cautioned people with health conditions could get sick.
If you're immunocompromised, you're a heavy smoker, you have other susceptibilities like COPD, you could then get into contact with very low levels of it and get a Legionnaire's disease.
He says Legionnaire's disease is difficult to treat because the bacteria is resistant to antibiotics.
So drink from a water fountain that is colonized, and then you can come into contact with it that way. And then at that point you would breathe that in, and if you're susceptible and your lungs are a good environment for that, the Legionella will proliferate and grow in your lungs.
Young explained flushing the water system will help get the bacteria back to safe levels. Replacing fountains or some of their parts also helps. Legionella testing has been part of the Veterans Administration for years. Young says it's good the rest of the government is now getting similar tests done.
You get a lot of leased buildings that maybe haven't had potable water testing, getting this type of testing.
Water testing in both buildings also found 13 samples with higher lead and copper levels than is acceptable. Those fountains are being replaced. A GSA spokesperson told me they're continuing to retest the water to make sure their solutions are working. Mark Stevens, Wave News.
Wow, interesting. Thank you, Mark. Still to come tonight at Wave News at 6. A man is left grieving and without any answers after his wife went out and took a walk and then was killed in a hit and run. His emotional journey for closure and where the investigation stands still ahead.
And how does an inmate escape from a state prison and isn't found until seen walking around a nearby neighborhood? Well, the Wave troubleshooters looked into this case.
This newscast is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Now, Wave News.
We have breaking news right now at 6. A member of the UL football team has been arrested for domestic violence.
20-year-old Tayon Holloway was booked into Metro Corrections today. He's charged with first-degree strangulation and fourth-degree domestic violence assault.
This is Holloway's first year with the Cards. The redshirt sophomore is from Virginia Beach, Virginia, played a couple of seasons at North Carolina before coming to Louisville. He's also the player who got that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty at the end of Saturday's game that then puts Stanford in field goal range to win the game. We've reached out to U of L Athletics for a statement, and we're also working to get details about the exact accusation against Holloway. For now, he's in Metro Corrections. Well, investigators are still working to find out who hit and killed an Oldham County woman, her husband, only 1 year into retirement with his wife of nearly 50 years, now planning a service to celebrate her life.
Wave News reporter Lena Noakes has this heartbreaking story with more questions and answers.
This makeshift memorial on the side of Highway 42 is the only thing marking the tragedy that happened here Monday. A 75-year-old wife and mother hit and killed and left to die by the side of the road. The driver nowhere to be found.
She was an easy, open, outgoing, loving, caring, and very giving person.
Married for 48 years, Larry Preble is now remembering his wife, Margaret, or Peggy as he fondly called her, for all she was. But a disturbing memory sticks with him, one that's hard to recall as he chokes back tears. In the early evening of November 11th, his wife went for a short walk, like she did every day. But daylight turned to dark. Larry called, Peggy didn't answer, and she never came home. Larry found her lying face down, her body cold and beaten, only a few hundred yards from home. He started to do CPR, joined by two strangers before EMS arrived.
They took over, but within minutes they said, "I'm sorry, she's gone. She never had a chance." I just had just a moment to lie down in the grass next to her and hold her, but I never really got to say goodbye.
Margaret was hit by a speeding car that didn't even stop. Her injuries were extensive. Who's responsible? That's the question her grieving widow wants answered the most.
If you have any information, contact the Oldham County Police Department. Reporting in LaGrange, Alina Noakes, Wave News.
Now, new at 6, an inmate escapes from the Kentucky State Reformatory in LaGrange, but it isn't until a sheriff's deputy sees him about a mile away that the prison even learned that he had escaped. The Wave troubleshooters have learned Alexander Maldonado escaped the prison without prison staff noticing. Maldonado was seen walking around a creek nearby wearing a t-shirt and khakis, holding his inmate shirt. He claimed that he was being illegally detained. Maldonado was taken back to the prison without any problems, and Wave confirmed that the prison captain was unaware of the escape, but the Department of Corrections did not explain why the prison didn't know about it. Maldonado was just over 6 years into his 8-year sentence.
30 seconds away from that 10-day forecast. 2 alert days to talk about. One going to impact the morning commute tomorrow, and another brings a blast of winter. We'll roll through it in just a half a minute.